From the time of Malachi the prophet to John the Baptist, there was a great period of divine silence. But amongst this silence arose a brave and faithful people. These were the Maccabees. Hello, I'm Knight Jake, and welcome to our bonus series of Bible Wars, Maccabees with RevFisk Raw. So before we begin our bonus series of Maccabees with RevFisk Raw, I just want to do a quick disclaimer. The audio you're going to hear is provided from RevFisk Raw with the permission of Pastor Jonathan Fisk of the Missouri Synod. The animation will be done by myself, Knight Jake, but all audio comes from his podcast, RevFisk Raw. I would encourage you to check out this podcast, and I hope you enjoy this bonus series on the Maccabees.
Chapter 7, verse 9, After this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands. Now, seriously, how weird is that? You got to admit, it's weird. Have you ever done a concordance search on palm branch? This is not all over the Bible. It's almost not in the Bible at all. It almost doesn't show up at all in the Old Testament. Isaiah chapter 9 and chapter 19, it's used as an example of how great God's wrath is going to be. As he says in 9 and then 19, 9 from Israel, 19 from Egypt, that he's going to cut off things, head and tail, palm branch, and reed, which is basically just a way of saying everything's going to be gone, everything's going to be destroyed. A picture of hell. You got that. And then you got Leviticus chapter 23, verse 40, which is straight up weird. Leviticus chapter 23 is an extended section in the rituals and code laws God gave for worship on Mount Sinai to the Israelites. It's an extended section about the major feasts. The last section is the Feast of Booths, sometimes called the Feast of Tabernacles, neither name of which is very helpful. They should call it, for us at least today, we should call it the Feast of Living in Tents for a week, right? The Feast of Camping, which is supposed to be celebrated on the 15th day of the 7th month for a full 7 days. And that would have been in September or October, depending on how the calendar was following that year. This was to commemorate the coming out of Egypt. Verse 42 tells us, You shall dwell in booths, right, for 7 days. All native Israelites shall dwell in booths, tents, tabernacles, that your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. In order to help them, the Israelites, going into the land, the promised land God was going to give them, in order to help them remember that it had not always been as good as it was going to be. God gave them an annual ritual, an annual event, a party, with things that would happen that the fathers would say, this is happening to remind us of that. So God's all about that kind of thing. He's all about tradition. He just doesn't want you to think the tradition's going to save you. He doesn't want you to think your works are going to do anything. So he sets up this tradition of this feast of camping to remind the people of where they came from. And then here's verse 40. And you shall take on the first day, this is the solemn rest day, the fruit of splendid trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days. You shall celebrate it as a feast to the Lord for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout all your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month, that your generations may know that I brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Seriously, this was Easter for them. But see, this doesn't make any sense out of why people have this during the week of the Passover. totally different time of year, totally different feast. Jesus entered into Jerusalem on a donkey, and they got palm branches. So, well, why? And look, I believe Scripture interprets Scripture. I believe that as much as possible, we should let Scripture be the main thing that informs us, but sometimes, history does have something to tell us about why things happen. There's this whole other set of writings called the Apocrypha. It has a bit of an inglorious history, although it really wasn't rejected by Christianity entirely until recent times. Dr. Martin Luther definitely accepted them as books of history that were emendations to the Old Testament. He didn't consider them inspired and inerrant, but he considered them worth reading. He did read them. He taught them. They were part of the Bible, actually. They were in the Bible, between the Old and the New Testament. And without going too far into all of that, one of these books, and there's a lot there, one of these books, there's really two of them, is called the Books of the Maccabees. And the Maccabees, well, they have kind of I don't know if it's a fun, but they have an important story.
Thank you for watching this bonus episode of Bible Wars. If you've enjoyed this series or any of the other work of the Order of Knight George, you can support us over at Patreon. I would also encourage you to go over and support Reverend Jonathan Fisk at Patreon. Goodbye, and God bless.